Listen to me, y'all. For years, the world has walked around with this picture in their heads about who's strong and who's weak, who's at the top of the food chain, and who's just trying to survive. They had their lists, their rankings, their assumptions, and in every single one of those conversations, America was always standing tall, chest out, telling everybody who had the power. And right behind them, people would look at India and say, oh, they're developing, they're growing, they're catching up. They said it like India was always on the way, never already there. And that's the problem. Too many people believe the myth of weakness without ever checking the reality of power. They thought India was just a sleeping giant. But what happens when the giant isn't asleep? What happens when the giant has been wide awake the whole time, just quiet, just moving different, just working in the shadows? You see, this is where the world got stunned. They underestimated, they assumed, they believed that because India wasn't standing on a stage announcing every single move, that meant nothing was happening. But what you got to understand is this is real power. It doesn't always need an announcement. Real power doesn't always need applause. Real power doesn't need to broadcast itself to validate its existence. Sometimes real power is quiet, disciplined, patient. And when it finally shows up, when it finally reveals itself, the whole room falls silent. That's what just happened. America stunned, the West stunned, the experts stunned, because the story they had written about India was never the true story. And let me be real with you. This isn't just about nuclear weapons or technology. This is about perception. It's about the way the world looks at you, the way people define you before you even open your mouth, before you even show your work. India was always more than what they tried to box it into. But because it didn't always fit the picture the West wanted to paint, people thought, well, maybe it's not there yet. Let me tell you something. You don't need validation from anybody else to confirm your strength. If you've been grinding, if you've been sacrificing, if you've been putting in the work day and night, when nobody's watching, the proof will come. And when it comes, it doesn't just prove them wrong. It forces them to re-evaluate everything they thought they knew. Now let's be clear. America ain't used to being stunned. They ain't used to being caught off guard like this. They're used to being the ones revealing, the ones dominating, the ones setting the pace. But when India's hidden strength came to light, it shook the room. Because all of a sudden, the balance didn't look the same anymore. All of a sudden, the quiet one in the corner wasn't so quiet anymore. All of a sudden, the game they thought they were controlling had a brand new player standing tall at the table. I need you to catch this, because this isn't just about nations and politics. This is about life. How many times have people looked at you and thought you didn't have it? How many times did they assume you weren't strong enough, smart enough, capable enough, simply because you weren't broadcasting your every move? They judged you on what they could see on the surface, not knowing the depth of your grind, not knowing the weight of your discipline. They counted you out, but the truth is you were never out. You were just preparing for the right moment to reveal what you'd been carrying all along. India's story is proof of that. They didn't need to shout. They didn't need to show off. They just needed to keep building, keep focusing, keep preparing. And when the moment came, the reveal was undeniable. And here's the thing. When the truth finally comes out, it doesn't just shock people. It humbles them. America Stunned isn't just about surprise. It's about being forced to respect what they overlooked. They thought India was only potential, but they had to face the reality that potential had already turned into power. They thought the future was far away, but the future had already arrived. And when that happens, when somebody sees your true strength for the first time, it changes the way they talk about you, the way they plan around you, the way they look at you. You're no longer the afterthought. You're no longer the maybe one day. You're now the standard, the competitor, the one they have to consider in every decision they make. That's why I'm telling you, never buy into the myth of weakness. Never accept the label somebody else tries to put on you. Because the world doesn't get to define your strength. You do. They don't get to decide whether you're powerful. You decide that in the quiet, in the work, in the grind. India made that decision years ago. They didn't wait for the headlines. They didn't wait for recognition. They built in silence. And when the silence broke, the whole world had to pay attention. So what does that mean right now? It means the game has changed. The underdog narrative is gone. The sleeping giant story is over. The myth of weakness has been shattered. And the reality of power is standing right in front of us. India isn't just knocking on the door. It owns a seat at the table. And the world, including America, has no choice but to acknowledge it. That's the kind of reveal that doesn't just make noise. It shifts history. That's the reality of power. Let's talk about this for a second. Because a lot of people don't understand the difference between showing your hand and holding it close to your chest. See, everybody wants to look powerful. Everybody wants to post it, brag about it, show it off, make sure the whole world knows exactly what they're doing. But here's the truth: strength isn't always about putting it on display. Sometimes strength is about restraint. Sometimes it's about discipline. Sometimes it's about knowing you've got the fire in your hands, but you choose not to burn down the whole forest just to prove a point. That's what India did. Strategic secrecy, national security. That's the play. Listen to me, this is chess, not checkers. You don't reveal every piece on your board just because you've got it. You don't show your strategy to your opponent before the game even starts. Nah, you protect it. You guard it. You keep certain cards close to your chest because you know if they underestimate you, that's your advantage. If they don't know the full scope of your power, they move sloppy. They plan wrong. And that's exactly what's been happening. While other nations were busy showing their muscles, flexing on camera, making announcements, India was moving differently, quiet, calculated. And when the curtain lifted, the shock was real. Do you understand how powerful that is? That takes patience. That takes confidence. Because the insecure move. That's the loud move. That's the one screaming, look at me, look at me. But when you know what you've got, when you know the weight you're carrying, you don't need to scream. You just sit back, keep working, and let the results speak when the time is right. India's nuclear program wasn't some accident. It wasn't some overnight success. It was intentional. Decades of planning, decades of sacrifice, decades of saying, we'll reveal when it's time, not when they want us to. That's what real discipline looks like. And here's what makes it so powerful: secrecy protected them. Think about it. If every detail had been broadcast, if every capability had been shouted from the rooftops, the pressure, the threats, the sabotage, it all would have come rushing in. But when you move in silence, when you control the information, you control the narrative. You decide when the world finds out. You decide when the reveal happens. And that's not weakness, that's wisdom. That's strategy. That's knowing the value of patience in a world addicted to instant validation. And let me connect this to you, because I don't want you to miss it. Some of y'all are out here revealing too much too soon. You're telling people your dreams before they're ready to see it. You're sharing your plans with people who don't even have the capacity to understand it. You're showing off moves that haven't even been tested yet. And then you wonder why they don't take you serious, why they attack you, why they try to tear it down. Stop showing everything. Stop giving them the playbook. Sometimes you need to protect it. Sometimes you need to build in silence. Sometimes you need to keep your head down, grind, and only let them see the fruit when it's right. That's what India did. That's why this moment hit so hard. Now, let's talk about national security, because this isn't just secrecy for secrecy's sake. This is survival. This is knowing you live in a neighborhood where everybody's got weapons, everybody's got strategies, everybody's got agendas. And if they think you're vulnerable, they'll exploit it. If they think you're weak, they'll pressure you. If they think you're exposed, they'll take advantage. But when you keep certain strengths hidden, when you guard them, when you make them wonder, now the game shifts. Now they're not sure. Now they've got to pause before they move against you. That's deterrence. That's protection. That's power without firing a single shot. And understand this: America stunned, not just because of what India revealed, but because of how well India had concealed it. Do you know how difficult it is to hide something of that magnitude in today's world of satellites, intelligence networks, spies, constant surveillance? That's mastery. That's discipline at the highest level. They didn't just build strength, they built silence around it. And that silence became their shield. That silence became their advantage. That silence became the reason the world is looking at them differently right now. And here's the kicker: secrecy doesn't just protect you, it magnifies the impact when the reveal comes. If people already expect it, if they've already seen hints, it's not shocking. But when you've been underestimated, when they've been dismissing you, when they think they've got you figured out, and then suddenly you drop the truth on the table, that's when it stuns. That's when it shakes the room. That's when they've got no choice but to reevaluate everything they thought they knew about you. That's when they can't ignore you anymore. That's what happened here. India didn't just reveal nuclear power. They revealed discipline, strategy, and control on a level most nations couldn't even imagine. And I'm telling you right now, that's not just national strategy, that's life strategy. Stop giving away your secrets. Stop letting everybody in on your grind. Protect your moves, protect your growth, protect your plans. Because the more you reveal before it's ready, the more vulnerable you make yourself. Build in silence, grind in silence, and when the time is right, reveal in power. Because when you do it like that, You don't just get attention, you get respect. This is the difference between noise and impact. Noise is loud, but it fades. Impact is undeniable, and it lasts. America heard the noise from plenty of countries before, but this was impact. This was India stepping out of the shadows and saying, without saying, we've been ready, we've been here, and now you have no choice but to see it. That's the power of secrecy. That's the power of discipline. That's the power of holding back until the time is right. And when the right moment comes, you don't need to scream. You don't need to beg for recognition. You don't need to fight for validation. The work will speak. The power will speak. The discipline will speak. And the world will be stunned. That's how you protect your strength. When something shifts in the balance of power, the whole world feels it. It's not just about one country getting stronger. It's about every other country now having to look at the chessboard differently. And make no mistake about it, that's exactly what's happening right now. India's reveal, this hidden strength, this quiet buildup that finally came to light. It didn't just stun America. It didn't just surprise the West. It forced everybody to stop and recalculate. It forced nations that thought they already had the map drawn out to redraw it completely. Because the global balance of power, it doesn't stay still. It's always shifting. And when a nation like India steps out of the shadows, the shift is undeniable. Think about this. For decades, the world order has been dominated by the same handful of players. The United States, Russia, China, they've been the loud voices at the table, dictating terms, setting agendas, deciding who gets respect and who doesn't. Everybody else, they were expected to follow, to play along, to accept their position. But when India, a nation with over 1 billion people, a rising economy, and now a nuclear capability that was far greater than anybody realized, reveals its true strength, that whole order starts to tilt. Suddenly, the table doesn't look the same. Suddenly, you can't have a conversation about global security, about economics, about technology, without factoring in India as a central player. And let's be real, America doesn't like being caught off guard. They don't like surprises. They're used to being the ones with the intelligence, the ones with the upper hand, the ones who know what everybody else is doing before they do it. But this time, the game flipped. This time, India moved so quietly, so strategically, that the U.S. had to sit there stunned, realizing they weren't as prepared as they thought. And that matters because now America has to adjust. Now they've got to rethink their strategy, rethink their alliances, rethink their assumptions. That's the kind of move that shifts the entire balance, not just between two countries, but across the globe. See, here's what you got to understand. Power isn't just about weapons. It's about perception. It's about who the world believes has influence, who the world believes has leverage, who the world believes can't be ignored. When India revealed this hidden strength, it didn't just add missiles to the equation, it added weight to its voice. It added credibility to its presence. Now, when global leaders sit down, they know India can't just be treated like a side character in the story. India is now a co-author. India is now shaping the narrative. That's power. And don't miss this, because this is important. This isn't just about military might. This is about economics. This is about alliances. This is about the balance of trust. When the U.S. looks at India now, they don't just see a partner in technology or trade. They see a nuclear force that has to be respected. That changes the way deals get made. That changes the way negotiations happen. That changes the way the future gets written. America has to recognize it. China has to recognize it. Europe has to recognize it. The whole world has to shift their perspective because India just changed the game. Now, some of you are missing the personal lesson in this. When you elevate yourself, when you reveal strength that others didn't see coming, it doesn't just change how they look at you. It changes how they treat you. It changes the way they speak to you, the way they negotiate with you, the way they plan around you. Before, maybe they overlooked you. Before, maybe thought they could control you. Before, maybe they thought you weren't even worth factoring in. But when you reveal that strength, when you step out in power, the dynamic flips. They no longer get to define the terms. You do. That's what India just did to the global stage. And don't think for a second that this doesn't ripple into every corner of the world. Because nations that were leaning heavily on America's shadow now have another option. Countries that were being pressured into alliances now have another power they can balance against. Smaller nations that once felt trapped between giants now see a new giant on the horizon, and that shifts their choices. That shifts their strategies. That shifts their loyalties. One move, one reveal, and suddenly the map looks completely different. That's the weight of hidden strength revealed at the right time. And here's the truth, America knows this. That's why they're stunned. That's why they're scrambling. Because they understand that when the balance tilts, influence tilts with it. When the balance shifts, alliances shift with it. And in a world where perception is everything, being stunned is not a position America wants to be in. They thrive on control, on dominance, on setting the tone. But now, they've got to play catch up. They've got to respond to a new reality where India's voice carries more weight than ever before. This is why timing is everything. If India had revealed too soon, maybe the impact wouldn't have been as powerful. If they had shouted about it before the foundation was strong, maybe the world wouldn't have taken it as seriously. But by waiting, by moving in silence, by choosing the moment carefully, the reveal landed like thunder. That's why it shifted the balance. That's why it shifted the conversation. Because when you step forward at the right time with undeniable proof of your power, nobody can deny it. Nobody can ignore it. Nobody can act like you're not in the room anymore. And you know what's even more important? This isn't the end. This isn't just about one moment of surprise. This is the beginning of a new era. Because once you've revealed hidden strength, once you've shifted the balance, once you've forced the world to see you differently, there's no going back. India has crossed that line. The world can't unsee it. America can't unsee it. China can't unsee it. Nobody can put the genie back in the bottle. From here on every conversation, every alliance, every calculation has to account for India in a new way. That's permanent. That's historic. That's transformation. And the message is clear, not just to America, but to the entire world: underestimate us at your own risk. That's how the balance of power changes. When we talk about India's rise, don't get it twisted. This moment right here, this revelation of nuclear strength, is not an isolated event. It's not some random breakthrough that happened overnight. It's part of a much bigger picture, a much bigger story that's been unfolding piece by piece for decades. This isn't just about weapons or military capability. This is about growth on every level. It's about a nation that's been quietly building, steadily climbing, refusing to let its challenges define its destiny. And now the world has no choice but to recognize what's been true for a long time: India is rising. Think about it. Look at the last few decades. India has gone from being seen as a struggling nation fighting against poverty, corruption, and instability to becoming one of the fastest growing economies on the planet. This isn't just about GDP numbers. It's about transformation. It's about building infrastructure, expanding industries, advancing in technology, and educating an entire generation to compete on the global stage. And at the same time, while the world was watching other powers make the loudest noise, India was putting its head down and grinding, quietly, consistently, with discipline. Now you can see the results everywhere. Tech hubs in Bangalore and Hyderabad that rival Silicon Valley. Space programs that are breaking barriers and putting satellites in orbit for a fraction of the cost other nations spend. A middle class that's exploding in size and influence. And now, nuclear capabilities that have stunned the most powerful country in the world. That's not coincidence. That's not luck. That's intentional growth. That's a nation determined not to be defined by its past, but to shape its future. And you've got to understand how big this is in the global context. For years, the world order has been dominated by a few nations, the same voices at the table, the same powers calling the shots. But now, India is stepping into that circle in a way that cannot be ignored. It's not just a regional power anymore. It's not just an emerging market anymore. It's a global force. And this revelation about nuclear strength, it's the loudest proof yet. It says to the world, we're here. We're not asking for permission. We're not waiting for recognition. We're claiming our place. And here's what makes this so powerful. India's rise isn't happening in just one area. It's happening everywhere. Technology, economy, military, culture, diplomacy. They're playing on every field. And when you can compete on every field, when you can bring strength to the table in multiple ways, that's when you become a true powerhouse. That's when your influence stretches across borders. That's when your voice echoes in every room, whether people like it or not. Now, some of y'all might be asking, why does this matter? Because it's proof of what happens when you stay the course, when you commit to growth, even when nobody's watching, when you keep grinding, even when people doubt you, when you keep in building, sacrificing, even when the world labels you as not ready yet. India stayed the course. India kept building. And now that consistency is paying off in the biggest way possible. That's not just a lesson for nations. That's a lesson for anybody who's ever been underestimated, overlooked. And don't get it twisted. The challenges were real. Poverty was real. Inequality was real. Corruption was real. Internal struggles were real. But instead of letting those obstacles break them, India turned them into fuel. They didn't let the struggles stop the growth. They didn't let the challenges cancel the vision. They kept moving forward, step by step, brick by brick. And now the whole world is watching the rise. That's resilience. That's determination. That's what it looks like when a nation refuse to quit. And you know what this does to the rest of the world? It forces them to adjust. America has to adjust. China has to adjust. Europe has to adjust because the narrative has changed. India is no longer just part of the conversation. It is the conversation. You can't talk about the future of technology without talking about India. You can't talk about global security without talking about India. You can't talk about economics, climate, innovation, or leadership without factoring in India. The balance of power has shifted, and this is the proof. But let me make this clear. It's not just about power. It's about identity. This revelation isn't just India saying, "Why can defend ourselves?" It's India saying, "We know who we are. We know what we bring, and we're not going to play small anymore." That's a message the entire world needed to hear. Because for too long, too many people believed the story that India is only a land of potential, not a land of power. But today, that myth is broken. Today, the truth is clear. India is not just arriving, it has arrived. And there's something beautiful about that, because it reminds every single one of us that no matter how the world labels you, no matter how long it takes, no matter how many obstacles you face, if you keep building, if you keep pushing, if you stay focused, your time will come. India's time is now, and the whole world sees it. So understand this. This nuclear revelation isn't the end of the story. It's just another chapter. The real story is India's rise as a global powerhouse, a rise built on discipline, on resilience, on strategy, on vision. A rise that signals to the world that we are no longer in a unipolar world. We are moving toward a multipolar one. A rise that tells America and everyone else that the future will not be dictated by one voice, but by many. And India's voice will be one of the loudest, one of the strongest, one of the most undeniable. That's what this moment means. It's more than shock. It's more than surprise. It's confirmation. It's recognition. It's the world finally realizing what India knew all along. That hidden strength, when revealed at the right time, can't just change perception. It can change history. India's rise as a global powerhouse is no longer a dream. It's the new reality.